hello everybody. Thanks for joining us here on our March 2024 Raleigh Astronomy Club imaging meeting. Tonight we have old time, sorry to say that,
No, it
Johnny,
is. It's true. It's true.
who will be just giving us a rundown of his Eclipse photography workshop that he gave last weekend, and the members that are here will share some of our images from past eclipses too. So, without further ado, yeah, short and sweet. Here we go. Go ahead,
All
Johnny.
right. All right. There's one thing about giving a talk about shooting the eclipse less than a month before the eclipse. And most people know what they're going to do and where they're going to go, and how much good is that going to do anybody? So, one thing that occurred to me is eclipses that I've shot anyway are so infrequent. I've been to 5 total eclipses that what you want to shoot and how you go about shooting it is separated by several years, even decades, and that changes. So it's good to kind of look back and see what you did back then, so you know more about what you want to do on April the 8th. And we and there's reasons for shooting and not shooting. I think there's a good reason to shoot it. First of all, this is a long eclipse. This is 4.5 minutes almost, and it's over twice as long as the one in 2017. So there's plenty of time to shoot pictures and do a lot of observing during the eclipse. And it's relatively close by. It's not South Carolina or Western North Carolina like 2017, but it's fairly close by. And and it's the last one in the continental U.S. until 2044. So that, what that means for me, it might be my last eclipse. And it's easier than ever to shoot digital stills and video, and it's a tangible keepsake from the eclipse that you attended, and it aids in your memories of it, and you can share your images. And this is what I keep going back to, and the ones that I've been on, who you'll meet along the way. That's a huge factor when you go to these things. And the best reason for shooting pictures is something you can do. It's something you can do in the digital age. If our photography can't get better, eclipses or any photography can't get better after we can see the image we just shot on the back of the camera, there ain't no hope for us. So it's a very easy thing to do, going back compared to the film days. If you stay in Raleigh, you're going to see over 3/4 of the sun eclipsed at 3:16 p.m. in the afternoon. It'll be 50 degrees high. Over 78% of the moon will be eclipsed, the most since August 21st, 2017. And that's a deep enough partial eclipse that you start to see some effects, such as the sky turning a kind of a steely blue, and shadows being a little funky, and pinhole images through the leaves of the crescent sun on the ground and on people's faces, things like that. But a partial eclipse can be cool too. This is a partial eclipse, actually the part of an annular eclipse that I shot out in New Mexico in 2012 at the VLA, the radio astronomy, National Radio Astronomy Observatory's facility out in the New Mexico desert. And this annular eclipse was just before sunset, and which was clouded out during annularity. And then this cloud that you see at the top there was where the ring sun was, and it just poked out before setting from the bottom of the cloud, and I was able to take this picture. So a partial eclipse has its interest, and this is we're pretty lucky to have them as close together. People in Carbondale, Illinois, probably thinking, another eclipse is coming. These things happen all the time, because they're right at the crossroads there. Carbondale and Paducah, Kentucky, they're near the center line of both eclipses. Whether to shoot or not to shoot goes back many years. This guy was shooting the 1860 eclipse, early photography, and he wrote that it was a feeling of regret that I turned aside to resume my self-imposed duties, and I well remember that I wish I had not encumbered myself with apparatus. So he was questioning whether or not he should be shooting the eclipse with his glass plate camera in 1860. So that's something that people have been trying to decide one way or another since then. This is 1991 in Baja. This is Dr. Fred Hess, longtime eclipse lecturer at the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. And his solution to that is you take a look and take a picture. Take a look and take a picture. So, but this is a tour in Africa in 2001. The thing about this eclipse versus 2017, there are so many larger cities in the path, and about 32 million people live in the area of totality during this eclipse. Whereas in 2017, there were a lot of wilderness areas that the shadow passed over. And next month, we've got all these population centers that are going to see totality. Those folks won't have to go anywhere, except for a clear sky, maybe. Rather than get into the nuts and bolts of photography, I wanted to point all of you to this. This is a great piece of work. It's hundreds of pages. It's a PDF download from Alan Dyer. Alan's an astronomy popularizer from Canada. He's a former planetarium director. He's a contributing editor at Sky and Telescope, and he has created this downloadable PDF for $11. And he put it out prior to the annular eclipse last October. But there is good stuff in there. It's everything you can imagine having to do with photographing the eclipse. He's got it in there, including how to process the images of the corona in totality using bracketed exposures. It's a real piece of work. It's at AmazingSky.com. We think of the eclipse photography as being the moon in front of the sun and a picture of that, but there's so much. The eclipse is all around you. And cameras and lenses, you've got the crowd and the landscape, the approaching shadows, shadow bands, these rippling shadows on the ground that happen about a minute before second contact and right after third contact. You got the little pinhole suns, and you got stars and planets near the eclipse sun. And the camera and the scopes, you're talking longer focal lengths that you have, like this background picture. This is from the 1991 eclipse, a picture I shot at Cabo San Lucas during totality, and this seahorse prominence that everyone was talking about. Seahorse-shaped prominence on the limb was very, very prominent. And so that's with telescopes. Then there's digiscoping, people putting cell phones against their eyepieces and trying to get some sort of picture like that. There's video, and eclipse video is like being there, but really it's not eclipse video, it's eclipse audio. It's all the sounds around you during an eclipse. And then there's processing eclipse imagery using software. So all of that is under the realm of eclipse photography, but eclipse photography encompasses all that stuff. It's not just the moon in front of the sun. Image sizes, all of these focal lengths have value during an eclipse. The short focal lengths, you might pick up Jupiter and Venus in the sky with the eclipse sun. And the longer focal lengths, say 300 to 1,000 millimeters, you've got the inner and outer corona that you can record in the same frame. So all of these focal lengths have a place in eclipse photography. So if you don't have a telescope or a 500 millimeter lens, it's still not a good reason not to shoot something. You can shoot the people at the observing site, the shadow bands. I've only seen shadow bands one time on one eclipse. Pinhole effects, behavior of local animals and people, stars and planets, post-eclipse celebration. unless you're clouded out. And speaking from experience, there's no celebration if you're clouded out. But being able to look at the back of your camera and see what you just shot, that is great. That tells you if we're done taking pictures yet, or if we're just getting started. But that's everything. In the film days, it was a leap of faith every time you press the button, and I for one didn't leap high enough. This is another one from July the 11th, that same prominence, but this is during third contact when Bailey's beads were appearing just in the vicinity of that prominence. This is in 2001. This is Africa on in Central Africa. This eclipse, beautifully clear sky, and the sun was about in mid-eclipse was about 30 degrees high. They bust us out to this dairy farm out in the country outside Lusaka, Zambia, and I knew the sun would be rather low, and I wanted to get something in the foreground, mainly us, all of our people. This is me right here, this fuzzy blurred guy right here. But there was this dead termite-eaten tree there that we all assembled under. And this is with a camera that I was not operating at all. It was on an intervalometer, and it was shooting every few seconds during totality. Remember, this is film. 2001, this is film, and you only got 36 exposures on the roll of film. But this unattended camera was shooting throughout totality, and it was making half-second exposures during totality. Here's some pinhole images from tree leaves. They really freak people out when they're not used to, they're not expecting to see them. This is in Africa. Person using a Quest Star there. This is one from Cabo San Lucas in 1991. This is the entire sun. And this is the diamond ring, the second contact in Cabo San Lucas. This was a long eclipse. This is 6 minutes and 20 seconds. I had a guy in the hotel room next to me out on the beach there that went to the bathroom during the eclipse and came back out. No lie. But 6.5 minutes, you got time to do a lot of looking around, a lot of talking to people, and a lot of pictures. And this one in April is not going to be 6.5 minutes, but it'll be pretty long, almost 4.5. So it's that's some valuable time in the moon shadow that you don't get very often. In 2017, I was out in Oregon for better weather prospects, but I only had 1:45 in Oregon. So I'm really looking forward to this one and being able to shoot more stuff. This is with a 500 millimeter lens in Cabo. But this is me and what I took to the 1991 eclipse. This is a 5-inch refractor that I bought about a year or two before the eclipse, just to take to the eclipse. And on an international flight, you couldn't take but so much stuff. And a 5-inch refractor, ordinarily you would mount it up on a mount like a G11 or something that's as big as me. So I rigged this up starting about a year before the eclipse. It's the 5-inch f10 refractor is looking into this driven flat mirror right here, a 6-inch flat mirror that is on a clock drive. And I got a piece of 6-inch PVC pipe for the telescope tube. And I had a machine shop cut it and thread it so I could screw it together, the 3 sections together. And all of this would fit into 2 suitcase size cases. I had a couple of monopods back here and a monopod right here. So it was sitting facing the ground really as it looked into that mirror. And this is me lining it up on eclipse morning on the beach there at Cabo, praying everything was working okay. I've been working on this stuff for a better part of a year, and that's what I shot all of these with this telescope from Cabo, like this one. But I was, at 6.5 minutes, I was changing film and swapping cameras, putting a Barlow lens in. You had all kind of time to do stuff. This is the 2017.
Sorry.
Okay.
John, yeah, one quick question.
Sure.
Is there a term for that where you use a telescope on a mirror?
Yeah, it's a celestat. Yep.
Single
It's
stack is what
a
it's called.
celestat.
Oh,
Ceolestat, I believe. If it's two mirrors, it's a heliostat, and I believe if it's one mirror, it's a celestat.
single stack. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I knew there was a term for this.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. All
See,
right. Thanks.
I'm on the south side of the mirror. Here's the polar axis for it right here,
Yeah.
and I'm on the south side of it, and that 5-inch objective is right there at the mirror as the mirror moves and tracks the sun.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't anticipate, it's 100 degrees out there, and I'm not on the beach sand. I'm on some grass, but it's hot. The ground is hot, and the 5-inch objective is just inches from the ground. So I was rooming with Leif Robinson, and he went into the hotel room just a few steps away, and he would fill the trash can with water, and he would put water on the ground right under the objective, and that would settle down the seeing a little bit. But it's you don't need your telescope objective 6 inches from the ground on a 100-degree day, but that seemed to help. But anyhow, the reason for doing this was so I could take a relatively large, long telescope to Mexico in two decent size cases. But this is 2017 eclipse, diamond ring effect, and this is us in Oregon. It was a 10:30 a.m. eclipse out in Oregon. Not a cloud in the sky, not a cloud in the sky, but only 1:45 of totality. Now, C word doesn't stand for clear. And I'm sure all of you have looked at this map and others, and a few days from now, we're going to start looking at long range forecasts to see what's what. But I'm going to be down here just northwest of Austin in Fredericksburg, Texas. And you can see it looks pretty good down here in Mexico, but we start to pick up more cloudiness as you go toward the northeast. This is April the 8th, 2019. And that pretty much shows this. Trouble is, since 2019, we've had April the 8th that's been clear all up in the northeast and socked in over Texas and Mexico. So we really can't say. That's the reason for that is people ask me, what's the best part of the eclipse for you? Is it the shadow rushing in, or is it the diamond ring, or is it the prominences around the sun? I say, no, it's none of those things. It's 5 minutes before second contact, before totality. And I look around and there's not a cloud in the sky. And I realize for the first time, I'm really going to see this thing, because until then, you really don't know. You really don't know. It's just a leap of faith. And particularly in the springtime, April the 8th in Texas is in the afternoon too. I mean, it's in the middle of the day. You need filters, certainly, whether you're going to observe or photograph the eclipse. This Botter safety film is kind of the go-to sharp, safe solar filter material. You need a filter. I know your filter comes off during totality, but you need a filter to compose your image, to focus your telescope or your camera. You don't need to be focusing during totality. You need to already be focused. And so this is our setup in Oregon with the Botter safety film on the front of my 102 millimeter refractor. And I had a little card there with a opening in it with the safety film across it, and I could just lift it up and put it back after totality was over. And this is a stack of 9 different exposures done during totality with that telescope and a Nikon D750 from 2017. Another view there. A lot of pictures to be made in 1:45. If you've got a DSLR with an articulating screen, that's a wonderful thing to have, because otherwise you're going to be on the ground looking up Yeah, for those of us in Texas around Austin, the sun will be 67 degrees high, a very high sun that day. If you're up in the Northeast somewhere or the Canadian Maritimes, during totality, it's only about 30 or 35 degrees above the horizon. But in Texas and in Mexico, it's like 70 degrees high. So it'll be very high in the sky. So having a camera that has a movable screen, because you're going to be focusing in live view. And I've got a little loop that I can put over my camera screen and look at a magnified view of the screen as I'm focusing. You got to have a remote release. This is not the time to how you say test your limits. Well, I can hold the camera at a 30th of a second, no problem. You know, this is not the day to try to do that or to prove to yourself or anyone else that you can do that. Get a remote release. I like a wired release because there's no battery in it. You know, it just closes a circuit, and you know that it's going to work. You're looking at shooting raw images with a DSLR or your mirrorless camera. Always shoot raw images. If you want a quick JPEG to look at, you can shoot JPEG and RAW at the same time. But the RAW, the 14-bit capture of the RAW file will give you a much better quality and dynamic range than any JPEG could. So the RAW is the way to go. Even if you've never done anything with a RAW file from your camera, if you don't even know what it is, still shoot RAW. You can learn after the Eclipse what to do with it. If there's any auto ISO setting on your camera, turn it off. You need to be able to set the ISO, the sensitivity of the camera, yourself. You don't want the camera picking that. And manual focus. I know you. Well, I've got this $2,000 200 to 600 lens. You know, that's got the best autofocus in the industry. That's fine. Turn it off during the Eclipse. You need to manually focus your image under high magnification. Zoom in on the screen at the limb of the sun or at a sunspot or granulation on the sun, and critically focus that manually, and then put a piece of tape on the focus ring so it doesn't move. There's no variability in focus throughout the Eclipse. Everything is at infinity. So you want to make sure that you're in focus. That ruins, or not ruins, but diminishes more total solar eclipse pictures than anything else, is soft focus. Soft focus. A friend of mine had a 500 millimeter mirror lens in 2017. He went down to South Carolina. I gave him a filter to fit it and everything. But the mirror lens focused by turning the whole front of the lens. And when he took the filter off during totality, he disturbed the focus a little bit, and he shot all this stuff just slightly out of focus every frame. So it's worth whatever gets you in focus and keeps it there. That's what you want. You want to do that during the ingoing partial phases, and without any problem at all. The image needs to be sharp. Like if this is your image here on your screen, you can put that little square over a cusp of the crescent sun and blow it up, and then very carefully focus and put a piece of duct tape on your focus ring so it doesn't move anymore through the eclipse. There's no need for it to move. Now with smartphones, this is what a surprising number of people did in 2017. They would have these adapters and these spotting scopes, these Swarovski birding scopes, that cost $2,500 or so, and they would have these cell phone adapters that could look into the eyepiece. This is called afocal photography, when you have a camera lens looking into an eyepiece, just like your eye would. And you can buy this little kit, not the telescope, but just the bracket and the little wireless remote release from Amazon for $20 or $30. I actually did that, photographed the 2001 eclipse in Africa with something like that. This is what we used in 2001. This is the first digital eclipse that I had shot. I shot some film too, but this was the first digital eclipse. Meade gave us about 5 of us these Meade ETX 70 refractors. And we had these Coolpix 990 cameras that were like 2.5 megapixels or something like that. And you had a hard connection, a hard threaded connection between the back of this Meade ETX and the lens of this camera, mounted afocally. And this is a picture that I shot with that setup of the 2001 Eclipse in Zambia. If you're using a cell phone and you want to use it in that way, if you can download this app or something similar, you can manually adjust the focus, the exposure, and the ISO of your cell phone using this Nightcap or some similar app. Tripods, you got to have a tripod. Remember, this is not a day to test your limits. You don't want to hand hold anything on a total solar eclipse day, but you want to make sure that you can point it at the sun. Like this tripod with this 500 millimeter lens on it, it's not going to allow me to point it when it's configured like this on the left at the 67-degree high sun. The handle of the tripod is going to hit the tripod leg. Won't be able to point it at the sun unless you flip it around and have that handle up. Then you can point it at the sun, but your handle is up here where the front of the lens is. Kind of awkward. But guess what day would be a bad day to find that out? And that would be April 8th. But a better way, if you're going to use this tripod, if you can get a bracket, a 90-degree bracket, and mount your camera like this, your camera can point to where the sun is, and you can have this handle that you can adjust the aim of the camera. If you use a 90-degree, this is just a 90-degree shelf bracket right here. But all kind of tripod types. I mean, you got these ball heads and fluid heads for video. These gimbal heads like nature photographers use and birders use, and then these that are 3-axis. But this is the one to have. If you want to buy a tripod head for the Eclipse, a geared head is the one to have. They're pretty expensive. A couple of $100 is the least you can buy one new for. And the one I've had for decades, and it was like $350 back in the 90s. But they allow you to move the camera in very small increments, very controllably, by turning these knobs in all 3 axes. In fact, I used one for the 1998 Eclipse on a ship. And I didn't, in the Caribbean, the total solar eclipse over the Caribbean in February of 1998, I took a 600 millimeter lens with me to shoot it with, but no tripod. But I had this geared tripod head, and I had this super clamp that I could clamp to something on the deck of the ship. And those knobs of the tripod head, I could just put a hand on each one, and the ship had kind of a gentle roll that took about 30 or 40 seconds. And I would be able to turn those 2 knobs and keep up with the roll and trigger my exposures. The longer exposures I could time until the end of the roll when the sun was most still, and then it would gently roll back over 30 or 40 seconds. So that's the tripod head to have right here if you're going to buy one for the Eclipse and you're using a long telephoto lens or even a telescope. They're very controllable, and you're going to be happy that you did. This is a setup that I'm thinking about taking to Texas. I have a kind of a 2-station setup with this small Maxitov scope and a 500 millimeter lens, and there's my geared head right there. Focus. Right now is a good time to practice focus because the moon's up in the evening sky. This is the gibbous moon through that 127 millimeter, 1500 millimeter focal length Maxitov that I'm thinking about taking to the Eclipse. This is a full frame view of how big the sun or the moon will be on Eclipse day. And it was nice and sharp and gave me some good size. I'm wanting to shoot something wide showing the whole corona, but I'm also wanting to shoot something very tight with another scope and camera entirely. And this is that the longer focal length stuff I'm looking to do. Also, if you can shoot the crescent moon like tonight or the night before or the night before that, that is a good stand-in for a total solar eclipse during totality, because the brightness range from the earth shine on the darker portion of the crescent moon and the sunlit portion of the crescent is about as extreme as the corona is, inner and outer corona, on the totally eclipsed sun. You have that wide range of brightness that you can practice on. So shooting the moon, if you need to know that you can repeatedly go out with what you're taking to the solar eclipse and shoot this focused, very sharp image without any motion, without any shake or anything of the moon. If you can do that, you don't want to go to this eclipse not having done that, or not having shown that you can do it from previously, because it's keep in mind, you're going to be excited on eclipse day. There's going to be a lot of people around whooping and hollering. The light's going to be falling. The temperature is going to be falling. During the Baja eclipse in 91, the temperature dropped 12 degrees over those 6.5 minutes of totality. So there's going to be a lot going on. So you need to be focused on focusing, because that's the thing that'll bite you if you're not careful, is having a soft focus eclipse. And the next thing that'll bite you will be some motion of the camera and the tripod that'll blur the image. Okay, so practice, make up a range of exposures from a 1,000th of a second to 2 seconds. Adjust your ISO so that is that exposure is accurate for all of that range, and focus on that zoomed in image on your cameras or your phone screen. Use live view, use a tripod, use a remote release. Do it until you get it right before you go to the eclipse. I wouldn't worry about doing any pictures of the eclipse through a long lens or a telescope had I not done this ahead of time. That'd be an easy decision. If I'd not done this ahead of time, like this whole thing was totally foreign to you, I would just watch the eclipse. Wouldn't try to do it. This is our crowd in Oregon during the 2017 eclipse. Had a nice crowd there. We had a couple of shaman there that were chanting during the eclipse, so we would have clear skies. And this is after the eclipse. We stayed in Portland, Oregon, and drove to Salem, Oregon the night before the eclipse, the day before the eclipse. It took us an hour. After the eclipse, it took us 5 hours to get from Salem back to Portland. So this is likely the way it'll be all over the country. Eclipse image processing, I'll just tell you about this one video that's been out there since before 2017. This is Adobe Systems Russell Preston Brown telling how to stack a very good way of stacking in Adobe Photoshop bracketed exposures shot during totality of the corona. He used some of Fred Espenak's images and demonstrated how to do that. But anyhow, as I said, if you're going to the eclipse, you probably already know what you're going to be doing and what you're going to be taking there. And, because it is that big a deal, and it's not something you would, particularly not any of us in the club would kind of put off until the last minute. But if it's your first eclipse, you need to think long and hard about whether or not you're going to shoot it. But with 4.5 minutes, almost 4.5 minutes of totality, you've got time to take some pictures, and a lot of time that you can observe the eclipse and take it all in. So doesn't have to be an either or. If it was lasting a minute or less, you probably need to get your priorities straight and do one or the other. But we're going to have some decent time in the Umbra on April the 8th. And so it's possible to do a little bit of all of it, I think. Okay. Any questions?
Well, that was terrific. I guess, well, If there's any question I would have as far as just giving people here tonight, I don't know how many of us who have experience, what would you say is probably the hardest image to take with an eclipse, Johnny?
Um, a well-focused one.
I figured you would have said that. So because
Yeah,
it's like one of the things I want to try this time, but it's like I don't know if it's going to work. As in, I don't know if I'm going to damage my phone doing it. I just want to get like right, like maybe 5 seconds before totality, just to you know
yeah,
videotape a picture of or videotape me holding up my phone at the sun,
right.
and then all of a sudden everything just goes dark. Because I think that was the neatest thing in 2017. It's just like, how dark is it going to get? Because Steve Christensen, yeah, we were there at the same place. His little phone app was counting down, and I was like, "Is this as dark as it's going to get?" And it was like a dimmer switch,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
was just like, "My God, had I had my phone up in front of my face, blocking the sunlight out of my eyes, you know, I think that would work, but I don't know if that's going to be a difficult thing or not. But I mean,
Well, you're at a good advantage, Chris, because you have shot one, recently,
yeah,
and so you know what to expect. If you haven't shot one, the fall off in light is not that dramatic until you get about maybe 10 minutes before totality. You start to sense the quality of the light is changing, and then about in the minute before totality, it really changes. Like someone took a dimmer and just cranked it all the way down uh, as the shadow sweeps over you. But it's like deep twilight. It's not it's 30 to 45 minutes after sunset. The Fred Espenac says that it depends on a lot of things like how much how clear the air is, how much scatter there is from over the horizon, how much dust is in the air, that kind of thing. But it's generally 30 to 45 minutes after sunset is the typical brightness of the sky at totality.
yeah.
It's bright. It's brighter if you're not near the center of the shadow, and it's darker if you're on the center line.
I mean, it's like you're saying. There's so much to experience during an eclipse, and so I mean, we had this topic tonight, like, and it's basically just rehashing what you did over the weekend here with your workshop. But it's like, yeah, there's so much things to experience with this thing, and it's like what you were just describing just now. I mean, it's like Steve Christensen to back me up on this when we were at this place at a that was at another club member's relatives front yard. I just like looked at Steve. I looked over. I shouted over at Steve. It was like, does it feel colder out here? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it was just like strange. It's just like it just came over me. And it's
yeah.
like,
It's all around you. It's all around you. During the Baja eclipse, there was a guy in the room next to us from Fort Worth, Texas, who was a big weather guy. He was all into weather. He was making weather observations throughout the eclipse. He was recording the temperature about every 20 seconds, and he let us know that it dropped 12 degrees during totality. So in addition to it getting, and then a little breeze will start up when the temperature drops, and so it's a lot of your senses are piling up on you right there during totality. That's why it's so important to practice ahead of time and do all of these nuts and bolts things with your camera and scope so
yeah,
that so that you don't screw up. Yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah,
Because
definitely.
I got I mentioned the guy that shot the out of focus stuff down in South Carolina. He's a friend of mine. Another friend of mine was down in South Carolina, and he had a 100 to 600 millimeter lens on his camera, and he had a ball head on his tripod, and he shot some partial phases, and then was repositioning the 600 millimeter lens on the sun, or attempting to, with that ball head on his tripod. And of course, he loosened the ball head tension, and it was just flopping all over the tripod. And he never was able to to get it back on the sun during totality. You
Wow.
know,
Oh,
and
that's
and then I know I got another friend, Yeah, my friends had a bad day in 2017, I guess, or some of them did, but he was using the automated Eclipse software, Eclipse Orchestrator or something like that. And he had 3 or 4 cameras there on the same tripod, and so he could just watch the eclipse, and it would just do all of his exposures for him. And sometime before totality, someone bumped the leg of his tripod and pointed it off the sun. So he got no pictures of the 2017 eclipse, even though he'd been planning it for a long time. And so there's 3 people that I know like that, and all those people, I got to tell you, have greater character than me, because if I had done that, I'd have never told anybody. I'd have said, man, I blacked out or something, I don't remember what happened, but I didn't get any pictures. But they shared that with me, and it's easy to do
Yeah,
as
very
it
J-
comes upon you there.
Johnny, this was incredibly helpful, as you've been talking tonight. So really appreciate your sharing about it. I did read, and I have been trying to practice. The one I have behind me is just from last night.
Oh, that's great, Dave.
Of just
Yeah.
trying to experiment a little bit, and I think this would probably be adequate. I do, but I may have a little bit of a soft focus issue. It's hard to tell with the earthshine on it, but I definitely
Yeah.
it was very helpful because you just sort of triggered a lot of different thoughts. I'm still torn on whether to bring. I've got a Zenith Star 66 millimeter, a little refractor that carries in a nice little tiny case. So it's going to be, and I've traveled with it before. And I was considering maybe bringing a Star Adventurer Pro 2, the Skywatcher mount, but based
Right.
on all your pictures and stuff, I'm wondering if that would be overkill to have it where it will track for me. I mean, I've brought it on board planes and stuff, so I know I can bring it, but from what I was seeing, I don't know if it's necessary or what you're
I'm
thinking.
certainly I'm going to have a tracking mount when I go to Texas. In fact, it's sitting over here. You
Okay.
can I'll just point my camera to it there. This is a little Optron harmonic drive mount that I just reviewed for Sky and Telescope for the May issue, and I ended up buying it to take to the eclipse and to use afterwards. But it works equally well in equatorial or altazimuth. And I've rigged up this bracket in the altazimuth mode where it can carry that 127 millimeter Mac, and it can carry a 500 millimeter lens, and also another camera that I can do video with, all on the same mount. But if this mount doesn't work for some reason, because it's a harmonic drive mount, you can't aim the mount. It's like a brick. You can't disengage the clutch and move the mount manually on the sun if it stops tracking. Can't do it. For that reason, I'm also taking my geared tripod head. So if I get out there on eclipse day and I'm getting ready to shoot the eclipse, and this thing dies, and it's not moving at all, I'm dead in the water unless I have some way of manually steering the aim of the scope and the lens. I hope this worked.
Yeah, you say all this. This is something I tell everybody because I did the 2012. I mean, I got into astronomy or amateur astronomy with telescope with an actual all-out telescope in 2007. And but we're talking about this as far as like rare photo ops, which almost always are something about a solar system object. Yeah, it's like you're saying in this throughout this presentation here. You really got to really know the equipment that you want to use.
Right.
I mean, backwards, forwards, up, down, left, and right. Because the thing I like to tell people is that this is what NASA has to do during their missions they're planning. I mean, they have to come up with every possible scenario where something goes wrong and
Yeah.
have a solution for it or a backup, some sort of backup technology for it. I mean,
Yeah. I've been shut down because of clouds, as I said, at 2 annular eclipses 18 years apart in various parts of the country that I traveled thousands of miles to shoot, and was clouded out both times. But I've got control over this stuff. I've got control.
To some extent, you're saying.
So I don't want I don't want it to be a road that I haven't gone down with the equipment that I'm taking to the eclipse.
Well, I'm hoping that, your luck is global. The whole continental United States will experience, Johnny Horne luck with this one.
Right. Well, I have a few more slides that I didn't show Saturday night that document those 2 clouded out annular eclipses, and so that take about 5 or 10 minutes to go through. But I'll let Chris. I'll let you decide if we need to go down that road, because, as you can imagine, it's a painful thing for me to go through. But it's been far enough back that I can talk about it now. But it's a bad feeling. I'll just say, whether you see these slides or not, it's a bad feeling. Feeling.
Well, you say that because in 2012, I don't know, maybe you got out to see this one too. I was the further west you were, the more of it you got to see, just because of the way.
Right. That's when I was at the VLA. Was in 2012. That's when I was clouded out.
So, well, it was the other one for me. It wasn't the annular eclipse. It was the Venus transit.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I was in Albuquerque, and I was just like looking at it beforehand. And I was like, well, I'm not going to get another shot at this. Let me find somewhere out west where it's always where it's probably going to be clear. And I went to Albuquerque, and I was like, okay, so we're pretty much on the edge of the desert Southwest. The odds of it being clear are pretty good. Well, I swear I have never felt so sick on my stomach.
Oh yeah.
Out there, and I was set up, and there was a sheet of clouds covering the eastern half of the sky. But what was cool? It stayed there.
Yeah.
And so on the western half of the sky, where the sun was going to be, with Venus going in front of it, it stayed here the whole time. And I was just like, my God, I've never felt so sick in my life.
Yeah, it's
do I want to do this some more or not?
I tell people, if it happens to you, the best thing to do is just, on your way back, go buy some nice restaurants or something. I don't know what to tell you.
make a trip out of it for other reasons.
Yeah, because they're all memorable. If I'm clouded out next month in Texas, after I've paid all that money to be on that tour, I'm going to be sick to my stomach, because like in 2001, when I was in Africa, if I was clouded out there, I was in Africa. I was going on photo safari, and all this stuff. And when I was on the ship in 1998, if I was clouded out there, we were on a cruise. But if I'm clouded out in Texas next month, the side trips that I will remember the trip, or remember on the trip, are a visit to the George Bush Library and the LBJ Library. Okay. And Ann and I can't decide which one of those we want to see less. So if I get clouded out in Texas, that's the only. And the Texas State Capitol in Austin, we get to tour that too. Yeah. So anyhow, if I'm clouded out on Eclipse Day in Fredericksburg, I will have still been to those places in Texas, which,
that's like Cleburne.
Yeah.
Cleburne, Texas. I've already taken a look at the map and the data, and it's like, I probably wouldn't have chosen that as a place to go to, but
yeah. But anyhow,
still, I'm sure it's a lovely town and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but it is something that you expect. I know. I think Fred Espenak said this is his 31st eclipse that he's been to, annular or total. And he said he's seen about 20 or 22 of them, I think. So it's I've seen, as I said, I've seen all the total, all 5 total ones that I wanted to see. But
cool.
not the annulars. The annulars we were.
Your annular,
Yeah.
And Johnny, can I ask another question? Is that okay? I've also got a Canon SX60, which is one
Yeah,
of
the
the
long
power zoom.
zoom. Mhm.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I've used it for a number of different things. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
had it for a number of years for more wildlife photography, those kind of things. But
Mhm.
I've been recently experimenting with it with some filters on it, a 67 millimeter
Yeah.
solar filter, and I think it's doing okay just in terms of solar images. So I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. This other camera I have on top right here is a Nikon Coolpix P1000,
Okay.
and
Oh, okay.
it's a similar,
Similar
similar
camera.
long zoom to yours, Dave, and it's got
Yes.
a 24 to 3000 millimeter zoom. But I'm just
Yep.
shooting video with it. It shoots 4K video, so that's all I'm going to do with it is shoot 4K video.
Right.
I'm not shooting any stills, but it does a good job with a
So and
still.
so if it was an either or, the little
Yeah,
Zenithstar 66 millimeter or
yeah.
just the Canon SX60, is there a
Oh, I would definitely take the scope.
take the scope? Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
I would say the same thing too, Dave. I
Oh,
mean,
definitely take the DSLR and the scope.
I don't have a
And
DSLR. So
okay,
I'd have to bring a little, I'd use my probably 533 MC,
yeah,
my
I don't
ASI.
know of any. I haven't heard of anyone using the ZWO, generally deep sky or planetary cameras to shoot a total solar eclipse. I'm sure somebody's done it.
Well, that's why I did this one with
Yeah,
the 533 that's
yeah. Well,
behind me.
you need to get you a good mirrorless camera between now and April the 8th, Dave. Yeah,
Can I start a GoFundMe?
well, I mean,
I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
you could get a used well
Yeah, there.
this D750 camera that I'm taking, you can get one of those for less than $500 now,
Yeah.
but I would definitely go with the scope and a DSLR or mirrorless camera on the scope over
Okay.
the
The
point and shoot.
ZWO.
Yeah,
Okay. Or
yeah,
the point and shoot.
the ZWO I would be uh Steve, anybody speak to that? You know what to do, Steve?
I use the W174 monochrome for my Light 60
Yeah.
in Alpha stuff, and that was extremely well. But
Okay.
I'm taking that from the Texas. So I can see
The only thing attractive about it, like if I were to use my ASI 2600 MC color camera on the Eclipse, it's a 16-bit capture,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the DSLRs and the mirrorless cameras, the best they can do is 14 bits, and you are shooting a wide dynamic range when you shoot a total solar eclipse. So that 16-bit would be good, but the awkwardness of of operating the camera, your 533 or my 2600 during totality, I think would freak me out. I just wouldn't,
my speed star tracks the sun, and I have a month on all tracks the sun. So as I started on years before the totality, it should track for 4 or 5 minutes. I would need.
Oh yeah.
Thing. So,
but are you gonna, Steve? Are you gonna adjust the exposure of the C star, or are you gonna just let it go and do what it does?
Really isn't much greater than Steve. I mean, I'll have the sort of filter on it, and just wait for it to do that. What I'm using on the installer now is a neutralizing filter, not the one that comes with the C star. And it gives much better structure on sunspots and things like that. So I'm assuming you do a better job of
yeah.
From the sun. I just have to go on and take it off my time, but that should be relatively significant. That's what
I wish everybody luck, no matter what you're using on April the 8th. But most of the folks who excel at total solar eclipse stuff have been using the digital DSLRs or the mirrorless cameras of late. Yeah.
I've got a question about your mount. Did you say you were using it in the out azimuth mode or equatorial mode?
I'm using it in the Altaz, Nathan. It's an HAE 29 EC Optron mount, and it can be configured in either way. And the reason I decided to do that is when I was reviewing the mount, I set it up observing the sun, a couple of months back, and it really did track the sun all afternoon in the Altaz mode. And all I did was configure it to the north and point it to the sun, and then sync the mount on the sun, and the sun was in the field of view all afternoon. And because it's in the Altaz mode, I can put a heavy load on it. The weight limit for the mount's about 30 pounds, and that's about what I'm at now with it. But it's the center of gravity is right over the tripod because it's an Altaz configuration, like so. And so I'm hoping it'll do well for me. But
So it's just to help with the weight balance mostly.
yeah, and the I can more conveniently put 3 systems on it and have
Okay.
all of them track the sun. I've got a way of aligning all 3 of them, and they can just track the sun all together. And the field rotation that you get when you're doing long exposure photography on an Altaz mount, I won't be doing any exposures longer than a couple of seconds. So I'm not going to have any field rotation because it's tracking in Altaz instead of equatorial. So it's just a convenience thing. And, you don't have to take, with this mount, you don't have to take a counterweight anyway, but just the way the load sits on top of it here, instead of, out to one side, and that load is directly over the center of the tripod, that appealed to me.
Thanks. I've got a AM5, the ZWO
It'll
harmonic
also
mount.
work. It'll also work in Altaz. So.
Yeah, I've never used it in that configuration before, so I was just curious if there was like a really good reason to switch over to out azimuth over the equatorial.
Well, see what I did with this one is I made this mount that I could let me turn it around here a little bit. I made this kind of Z-shaped mount. Like this is the saddle right here that you would have the scope on. It would be out to the side.
Your mount. Are you trying to show us your mount?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still sharing on the.
Okay. Do I need to stop sharing?
Just make sure your image smaller if you're sharing.
Let's see. Stop share. Okay. All right.
There we go.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
But see, I made this kind of Z-shaped mount out of aluminum, so I could put all these 3 things right on top, and the center of the load would be directly over the center of the tripod, and it'd be very stable, and it would all track. That was my thinking on that, and I've used it several nights, and seems to be working well. And it takes me, I'll be ready to go in 10 minutes after I drive up to wherever we're going. But like I said before, though, if this doesn't work, I gotta get a I gotta get a tripod with my geared head on it. If this lets me down, I'll be out a lot of money and won't get it tracking. So, but if this works, it should be a good way to go. I'll let you know.
I put out the solar mount that I have. It's expensive though. I mean, we're fantastic. I check the sun with this for 3 hours. Put on kind of anything on it to track the sun.
Yeah,
it's fine, but it's not cheap.
But I it says to align the mount to north when you set it up in
Oh.
out-of-TAS mode. But then you just tell it to go to the sun, and it will, and it'll be near the sun somewhere. And then you use the hand control to get the sun in the middle of the field, and then you hit sync to target, and it knows that's where the sun is for that azimuth, and then it stays with it the rest of the afternoon.
Okay, pretty cool. Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and go to the second part of the meeting as far as does anybody have any Eclipse photos they'd like to show? I know you do, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I can show my 2017 of the Eclipse if you want to see them, Chris.
If you have them available, go for it.
Okay, right here.
Actually, here, how about this? You get yours started and I'll show mine.
Now.
Do what?
Oh, if I can start mine now, yes.
Just wait. I'll go ahead and show mine. Get yours in order. So what I'm going to show is just what I did. Like for example, what Johnny was talking about as far as like taking bracketed photos. That's what I did. Now, what I was using is I was using a Canon 600D Rebel, and it was modified. Not that we really cared about it for an Eclipse. I did a bracketed set that was consisted of 8 photos. So the first image was at 1/4000th of a second. This is the 2017 Eclipse, so you can see the 2 prominence groups right there. And then let's see, hopefully it'll go to the next one. Okay, that's 1/1000th of a second. 1/250th of a second, 60th of a second, 1/15th of a second. So as you can see, it's going in quarters here, and 1/4 of a second, and then 1 second, and finally it did 8 exposures. This one was pretty much useless right here, but that's 4 seconds. So what I was using is I was using a program that you could put onto a Canon camera. It's called Magic Lantern, and I mean it worked beautifully. And it's just like Johnny said, I downloaded it and put it on there, and I practiced with it for a few months before the August 2017 Eclipse, and I was like, yeah, I think this is the way to go. So this was with a telescope that as it was a 630 millimeter, 90 millimeter aperture refractor, and set at f7. So yeah, 90 times f7, so it's 630 millimeters focal length. And so then, of course, you do all your processing magic, and well, there's a diamond ring of it, of the sequence there. So this is, of course, a third contact, I guess you would say. Yeah. Anyways, this is the one where I put them all together, and I don't know why, but Earthshine came out fuzzy. So I'm starting to think what Johnny had said earlier in his presentation. Maybe my focus was off, but yeah, it was really weird. I just could not get the exposure for Earthshine to be sharp. And I mean, you go back and you look at the actual long exposure images.
It's a tough exposure to make, Chris, because you have that bright corona that's right there adjacent to it, and you have some flare and some infill going on there. It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. You just need to, which you did. You just need to use a high contrast system, like the refractor is, to give you the best results possible on it. But it's a tough shoot to get the Earthshine.
Yeah. So Yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, but of course, I like this. I guess the au natural, was it Corona of the regular Eclipse. So there's that one. So that's pretty much my finished product of the whole trip. So, but here's the only other one that I've experienced solar eclipse was a partial. This was over the Atlantic. I don't know, Johnny, if you went out and did this one. This was November 2013. And this was at Carolina Beach when a third of it was still eclipsed. A third of the disk was still eclipsed, using the terminology here. But yeah, my uncle, he lives at Carolina Beach, like I told him about this and he couldn't wait to see it. So yeah, I went out there and this was with a kit lens that I had gotten with this camera. This actually was oh gosh, what was it? It was a much older camera. I think it's 350D. It's an 8 megapixel DSLR camera, and the kit lens. It came with two kit lenses. It came with the standard 18 to 55 millimeter zoom lens that most consumer level DSLR cameras come with when you go with the Rebel line of Canon. And then I also, as a bonus, I paid an extra $100 for I think it was 50 to 250 millimeter zoom lens, and so that's what took this image. And so it was a zoom lens, and this one was I had it zoomed to 200 millimeters. So this is what's nice about this picture is, yeah, it's great. A lot of people liked it, but in the spirit of us being imagers, this gives me an idea of what a 200 millimeter image of the sun, eclipse or not, would look like uh, using a DSLR with the APS-C size chip at 200 millimeters. So that's the thing I'll take from this as far as from an imaging perspective, but from photographically, or just a photograph is worth 1,000 words, or a picture is worth 1,000 words. Yeah, yeah, this is probably the best, most interesting image out of that whole thing. But anyway, so and then go ahead and go back here, stop share, and then let's see. Go to this. That's my wife. My wife Caitlin looking up at the sun, and this is us at the 2017. Steve's not in this photo, but John Sadler there. He was having some mount loads at the time, I think. I guess that's why his hands were on his hips right there. But yeah, and the imaging rig I have that I Tattali that you saw earlier, that's right there to the right with the hand controller tucked in my wife's trunk of her Impala. So, but I don't know. Can you do that? Let's see. So yeah, there's that. There's her looking up at the sun. There's me using a Pringles can. We had a crescent, pinhole camera kind of thing. Of course, there's her. And the thing I'm jealous about with my wife is that it was her birthday. She got to have a solar eclipse on her birthday. There's Steve right there. There you go. There he is. And Steve, you brought your brother, right?
Yes, that's his car, that's his vehicle.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, good times. All right. That's all I have. Did you want to show your stuff, Steve?
Sure. That's showing up.
Yeah, I see it.
All right, so this Bailey's Beats. This is with a Canon CD 200 millimeter Canon lens with a 2x extend on it on a tripod. And I just took a whole lot of pictures, various exposures, and been doing it as long as I could. normally I put a nutrient density filter on it before the eclipse and take some pictures of the partial part phase. And I took that off. It's on with a magnetic patch, so I can get it. And
Yeah, I remember that one.
this diamond ring, some details. And some software to control all of it. And there's my enough Corona and some more. And this was with a wide angle lens just to get the potential stars and planets nearby. I think that's regular. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct, because my wife is a Leo, and yeah, that's the way it works. It's like you're
a lot yet. Some stars and planets today, that's keeper that I think and then this is what the whole solar can installed, and the part that's to the right, it's the black part, that's the eclipse. The other two are clouds through early on. So I have two versions that I'm going to bring you with the text.
So Steve, please tell me you're going to do that this time around, right?
That's why I just said I'm taking several solar cans, something called a solar puck, and I'm just going to scoop them all up and let it go, and see that.
Very good.
You just set it up and let it go. This is, I guess, about 3 hours. In see that. I don't know if this is joint shipment or not. Slow here. 800 that can, no, I said 800 second exposure within 660. 5 hours of resolution. Okay, so I just aimed it at the sun, the nutrient density filter on it and let it go. And then the clouds that came through here that the pinhole camera shows. And then we were very worried time this would be during the totality. So and there's the next batch of clouds that came through. It's on file. So it's very interactive at this point. Pretty that's back. And then files a little bit. It starts to fade. That's the eclipse starts. And then it's more and more. Time goes on. Pretty soon we'll go. Out there now. Then I took the filter off and then put it back on again. And it comes back out. Of course, you can pause. Yeah, right. This is totality time lapse. All right, this is what if I try to build some spots if I fire to the place. And then there, yeah, there's a picture. There's here you are, Chris. Where I am, I'm way 25 times more than I do now. Embarrassing. But no. And this was something I made just to show the category process from NASA's satellite imaging, showing shadow. And then this is the usual in all.
That's cool.
That's all I got, Chris.
Okay, very good. Does anybody else have anything to show? No? Okay, well, it's already 8:50, so yeah, we've burning the midnight oil, I guess you would say. But okay, well, Johnny, I'd like to thank you. Yeah, so well, I will thank you for coming out tonight and giving us your odyssey through all these experiences of all these eclipses that you've been through. And well, I'll keep my fingers crossed that you will get an annular eclipse one of these days. That'll be like super nice and clear, and finally get to see what a ring of an all-out ring of fire looks like. Anyway, okay. I guess that'll do it for us. So Steve, I guess we'll sign off. Thank you for everybody for coming, and we'll see you in April. See what everybody came up with for the eclipse.
Okay.
Bye.